Imagine a wall of wind, a storm so fast, so violent that in just minutes, entire cities lose power, crops are flattened, and buildings crumble. It's not a tornado, it's not a hurricane. This is a derecho. Most Americans have never heard of it, until it's too late. August 10th, 2020, began like any other summer day in the heartland. The air was thick with humidity, the sun beat down on endless fields of corn, and there was little sign of the atmospheric bomb that was about to detonate. But in the upper atmosphere, the ingredients were coming together for a catastrophe. An incredibly unstable air mass, supercharged by heat and moisture, was becoming volatile. What began as a seemingly ordinary cluster of thunderstorms over Nebraska quickly exploded. Fueled by the volatile conditions, it organized and began a terrifying march eastward. Within hours, the skies over Iowa turned a menacing dark green. A shelf cloud, looking like a tidal wave in the sky, stretched from horizon to horizon. This was no ordinary storm. It was a self-sustaining engine of destruction, a monster stretching over 700 miles. Then, it hit. Not with the rotating fury of a tornado, but with the sustained brute force of a solid wall of wind. For hours, winds howled at speeds equivalent to a Category 4 hurricane, with peak gusts hitting an astonishing 140 miles per hour. The sound was a deafening, continuous roar. In just 14 hours, the storm carved a relentless path of ruin through 8 states, from Nebraska to Ohio. The aftermath was apocalyptic. It flattened an estimated 14 million acres of crops, a third of Iowa's entire agricultural landscape. It shredded homes, snapped massive utility poles, and toppled 100-foot grain silos as if they were toys. The total cost of the damage would exceed $11 billion, making it one of the costliest thunderstorm events in U.S. history. Stunned and reeling, the people of Iowa struggled to describe what they had endured. They called it a hurricane without an ocean, a fitting name for the hours of sustained hurricane-force winds. But meteorologists had a specific and much more obscure name for this phenomenon. They called it a derecho. The term, from the Spanish word for straight, describes a widespread, long-lived straight-line windstorm associated with a band of severe thunderstorms. To qualify, the wind-damaged swath must extend for more than 240 miles and include consistent wind gusts of at least 58 miles per hour. The 2020 storm didn't just meet these criteria, it shattered them, becoming the textbook example of a derecho at its most violent and destructive. In the world of severe weather, some storms are household names. But there's another lesser-known force of nature, a meteorological juggernaut capable of carving a path of destruction hundreds of miles long. It's called a derecho, pronounced derecho. It is a widespread, long-lived windstorm defined by its ferocious and unrelenting straight-line winds. Unlike storms that twist, a derecho moves with a singular, terrifying purpose, a massive wall of wind that slams forward in one direction. The name itself offers the first clue. Derecho is Spanish for straight ahead. It was first applied to this phenomenon in the late 19th century by Dr. Gustavus Henriks, who sought to differentiate the straight-line damage he observed from the rotational damage of tornadoes. The term was largely forgotten for nearly a century, only to be revived by meteorologists in the 1980s as they began to fully grasp the mechanics of these powerful storm systems. So what is the engine behind a derecho? These storms are born from an organized cluster of thunderstorms known as a mesoscale convective system. As this system matures, a pool of rain-cooled air sinks and rushes forward, creating powerful winds at its leading edge. On weather radar, this often produces a distinctive and ominous signature, a bow echo, shaped like an archer's bow. This arc indicates where the strongest winds are surging ahead, propelling the storm forward for hours on end. To be officially classified as a derecho, a storm must meet stringent criteria. Its path of wind damage must extend for more than 400 miles. Wind gusts along most of that path must be at least 58 miles per hour, and it must include several well-separated gusts of 75 miles per hour or greater. Hurricane force intensity. If a tornado is a surgical scalpel, leaving a narrow scar, a derecho is a bulldozer, flattening a landscape that can be over 60 miles wide. This is what makes them so uniquely dangerous. While hurricanes form over oceans and weaken over land, derechos are born over land and can sustain their fury across multiple states. They are continental storms that bring hurricane-force winds deep into the heartland, often with little warning, catching entire regions unprepared for their sudden and overwhelming power. Derechos are deceptive. There's no swirling funnel to warn you. Unlike a tornado, with its iconic visible signature that commands our attention, a derecho's threat is far more insidious. It doesn't announce its arrival with a singular, terrifying shape. Instead, it's a malevolent transformation of the entire sky. The horizon turns a bruised, greenish gray. The wind doesn't just pick up, it screams, a sustained, deafening roar that sounds less like weather and more like a freight train derailing right outside your door. The sky darkens, the wind rises, and then it's chaos. In the 2020 Iowa derecho, the statistics are staggering, but behind each number is a story of profound loss. 4 people lost their lives, caught in the storm's sudden fury. Over 1 million people lost power, plunged into darkness as the grid collapsed. For days, even weeks, communities struggled in the summer heat without air conditioning or refrigeration. The agricultural heartland was dealt a catastrophic blow. 14 million acres of crops destroyed, nearly 40% of Iowa's corn and soybean harvest, wiped out in hours. The economic toll soared past $11 billion. I thought it was just another thunderstorm. We get them all the time. But this was different. The sound, it was a constant, high-pitched shriek. Then my windows started shaking like they were going to explode. I grabbed my kids and ran for the basement, and we could hear things crashing and breaking upstairs. It felt like the whole house was being torn apart around us. When we finally came up, our entire backyard was gone. Our neighbor's roof was sitting in our living room.
I was out trying to get the equipment secured when it hit. The sky went from light to pitch black in 60 seconds. The wind knocked me off my feet. I crawled to the barn, and the noise was just unbelievable. The metal roof was peeling off sheet by sheet, flying into the air like paper. I watched a grain bin that stood for 50 years just crumple. It was a lifetime of work, gone in 10 minutes, just gone.
If you live in the Midwest, Great Plains, or East Coast, you could be in derecho territory. Here's how to stay safe. Monitor weather alerts. Have an emergency kit. Shelter in place. Away from windows, preferably in a basement or interior room. Don't underestimate severe thunderstorm warnings. Many people ignore them, thinking they're minor. They're not. The derecho may not have the fame of a tornado or hurricane, but its power is every bit as deadly. Awareness is your first defense. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button. Subscribe for more disaster breakdowns that could save your life. Click here to learn about another rare but deadly storm you've probably never heard of.